Listen, guys, I have one of the craziest stories that happened to me while I was in Kenya years ago. I was in the western region outside of Kisumu in East Simi, and it's an area called Kitmikaya, which means the Lady of the Rock or the First Lady of the Rock. And I was doing a meeting. The meeting was outside. It was, I don't know, 100, 110 degrees. It was super hot. And I'm moving in the prophetic, just flowing with the Spirit of God. My wife and I had already traveled for many, many hours just getting to this destination. And the Lord gives me this word. So we're outside in the heat. It's a few hundred people. And the Lord gives me an unusual and peculiar word. And that word is, there are people here that you've been tormented by a spirit. And I see people that are climbing up on your roof, dropping things down through your roof, dropping water down through your roof, and also knocking on your door and tormenting you at night and running off. And so I get this very strange word about people being tormented by other villagers, other people nearby climbing up on their roof and dropping things down. And so anyway, after I give this word, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Maybe I'm just fatigued from the travel. Maybe this heat has gotten to my brain. And all of a sudden, suddenly, instantly, 6 people not only run to the altar. Now, it wasn't in a church, it was outside. So I'm saying the altar was the grass field, the dirt that was right in front of me outside. And they slid and literally bowed down and began to just beg for prayer, just beg for deliverance, just cry out for God to deliver them. And I began to pray for each one, and they fell under the power of God. And then I began to issue a decree that whoever these tormentors were that were tormenting these people, that the power of God would bind the spirit behind them. And so let me tell you later, my host, Maurice Ondiambo in Man of Missions, him and his wife hosted us lovely in Kenya that particular year. I asked him, I said, what was that all about? I said, that word that the Lord gave me, it was a little different, a little peculiar, about people on the top of people's roof, dropping things down, pounding on the roof, disturbing people, doing all this crazy stuff. And he said, you don't know this, but we have something here. And he used the Lua. Lua is one of the big tribal groups there in Kenya. He said, but he used the Lua terminology for it. I'm going to use the English terminology. He said, but we have something called night runners. Night runners. And I never had heard of that. But night runners are those that are possessed supposedly by a spirit that causes them at 10 p.m., 9 p.m., 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m. to get naked and run around naked throughout the village, throughout the city. And what they do is something that's very peculiar. They go and they'll knock on people's doors, and then when people come to the door, they'll run. Or they might go and knock people's cattle over, and when people come out to their farm or their yard, their cows are knocked over. Or they also poop on people's doorsteps. And when they walk out, they'll step into the doorstep. Or people that are walking along the sides of the road, they'll jump out and terrify them and scare them. Also, they'll climb up on people's roofs and pour water down or do stuff to the roofs. Now, they may come back 3 or 4 times in one night, harassing a person. And there's other just wild and crazy things that they do. And they do this for hours and hours and hours, oftentimes naked. And they say that it's a spirit that possesses them. And if you're married to a night runner, you're not supposed to reveal their identity and that they're a night runner. And so they can really bring a spirit of torment, a spirit of fear, and a spirit of harassment into an area. And when you have fear and anxiety, it gives room for the enemy to come in and other demonic forces. And so I was taking authority over this spirit, and I was joking with Maurice Audiambo after I left that region of Kenya. I always would ask him, how are the night runners? And he would say to me, since you came and took authority and bound it up, there's been a significant decrease in the night runners here in Western Kenya in that particular region. And so I checked on it for about 2 years. I haven't checked lately, but it was just the strangest thing to hear about these individuals, that a spirit will come on them at a certain time. They would take off most of their clothes and they would run for 2, 3, 4 hours until that spirit lifted off of them. and they would torment people, harass people, make people afraid, and do all types of wild and crazy stuff. So I was able to find some of this on YouTube as well. Shout out to Man of Missions that hosted me in Kenya. Pastor Maurice and his wife and his team, they would know this story to be true. And when you travel the nations doing ministry and you travel to different territories and regions, you discover that different territorial spirits and strongholds do exist, and they're out there. But this was one of the more stranger and peculiar instances of spiritual warfare and deliverance that I had to deal with in my apostolic travels.
In Kenya, night runners have been spoken of for centuries. It is said that these night runners have a demonic spirit that compels them to scare people during the night. Believe me when I say that in Kenya, night running has become more like a normal thing to do than just a story in some other countries. Because some people in Kenya have a day-to-day conversations with their ancestral spirits. It is a mysterious country in which strange gods and ghosts are seriously treated, where ancestral spirits reign over the fate of the living. We hear people talking about night runners much. They are said to practice witchcraft and even have an evil spirit that are supposed to haunt and terrorize their neighbors during the night. But no one knows who these night runners are, because some people also say that those night runners are not real people but spirits who use people. We hid a camera outside the house